As I said, Rachel is going to be our facilitator today for our back to school for preschool and pre-K. Rachel joined Becker's just back in June, and she's an experienced educator with a specialization in early childhood special education. She's a classroom management wizard. She has that little um, wizard wand that she waves around every once in a while. She's super passionate about creating nurturing environments where every child can be their best and thrive. She's a mom to three boys and two Great Danes. So maybe we'll find out which is worse, the three boys or the two Great Danes. And she's guilty of rearranging a classroom 6 times in one school year. That's pretty low, actually, I think.
Thanks, Kathy.
So I'm going to turn it
Makes
over
me
to
feel better.
Rachel and we're going to get started.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to be a little transparent right now. I've done lots of professional development, but this is my first nationwide live webinar. So I'm a little nervous, but I will tell you guys that seeing everybody come in and seeing where you're located and what you do as an educator is actually really comforting, because it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, they're in the trenches. I've been there with you guys, and we all support each other. So hopefully we'll be able to support you a little bit today and give you some great information as you prepare for back to school. So our theme today is really wonder. Okay, how do we create wonder within our preschool environments? And really, we want to get to the foundation of this. And the foundation of this is, how are we going to promote our classroom environment that feels safe, where children feel like they belong, where they feel accepted, and where they just are allowed to create and wonder, right? So this is a great example. This is a little preschool friend here in the red shirt, and he was on the playground, and he discovered that when you crack open these acorns, there are worms inside of these acorns, right? So that really facilitated that wonder for him. He was like, oh my goodness. So that wonder spread like wildfire. First, it spread to his classmates, and then it spread throughout the school. And everyone was learning about worms. We were bringing worms from home, right? We were digging in the dirt for worms. We were taking every single acorn we could find on that playground and cracking it open. Those poor squirrels weren't going to have anything for the winter, right? So they were getting books from the library about worms. They wanted to do portraits in the art center about worms. So this really is a great demonstration of what wonder can be in our preschool programs and what we want to be able to provide. But first, we really have to have that foundation in our classroom environments that can provide this. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So our agenda today is, we're going to focus on 3 key areas. Okay, we're going to focus on relationships, both children and their families, as well as the community, right? We're going to look at environments. Is that environment safe? Does it promote belonging? Does it promote discovery? Okay, and then we're going to look at rituals and routines and how that promotes that safety piece and feeling safe, as well as having that structure and connection. So with relationships, we really want to promote belonging. And so this is Maya Angelou's quote, and it says, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Okay. So as educators, that's our superpower, is to provide love and belonging to our students. And I'm going to relate back to one of my own children. I'm going to put on my mom hat. I have a 10-year-old son who is neurodiverse, and he has a very difficult time forming relationships with peers. But he is highly intelligent and he loves school. And he goes to school and he feels like he's accepted and he belongs there. And that is huge for me as a parent, to trust those educators to do that. But also as an educator, that's what we want to provide to all of our students. We want them to feel like they are loved and that they belong. So relationships is the foundation of all of this. You guys are the most important part of that environment. Okay, you could be in the middle of the woods with no materials and no supplies, and you are going to bring it, right? That's you guys. So if we look at our pyramid model, we can see right here, number 2 is that nurturing and responsive relationships. But that foundation is the workforce. It's you as educators. So that relationship piece is primary before we can do anything else. And then if we look at NAEYC's program standards, relationships is number one. So we know that that's the most important key thing for us. And often, we do have some difficulty. So in the words of distinguished developmental psychologist Yuri Bronfenbrenner, in order for a child to develop normally, somebody's got to be crazy about that kid. That's number one, first, last, and always. Even better is if it's more than one somebody. So we've heard that many times, right? Studies have shown that if there's just that one person that loves that child and provides that sense of belonging, it makes all the difference for that child's trajectory in their life. So as educators, that is our number one priority for our students. So when we're looking at relationships, I like to start the year by grounding myself and creating some goals. So here are two examples of goals that I've created. All children and families have a sense of belonging and feel accepted and understood. Okay. So I really also want to think about, are there any barriers that I have in order to achieve that goal? Okay. And then we engage all members of the school community in a joyful learning. So what I want to do now is, when we're coming to obstacles throughout our school day, often we have situations where we're having difficulty. There's times when it becomes chaos, or we're just overwhelmed. So what can we do as educators when we can't tap out, we don't have a moment to tag somebody else? Can we take a moment for ourselves and our students to really ground ourselves? So I want to do balloon breath real quick. It's Erin's favorite, so hopefully she can join me. So I want everybody, don't worry, we can't see you. So it's up in the chat. So I want everybody to reach those arms up in the air, and we're going to create your balloon. And you kind of stretch a little bit, and you're going to breathe in and create that balloon. And then you're going to breathe out and deflate. Okay. So that's something that you can do to ground yourself and also to help ground your students, right? And really building those relationships and recognizing that sometimes it's not always easy for us. And there are times where we have students that we are going to have more difficult times with. I don't want to say difficult children. Typically, it's just difficult behaviors, right? So I'm going to tell a little story here as well about a student that a couple years ago I had, who I was a special educator. And so he was in the general education environment. First time he had ever been in preschool, first time out of his home experience for his family. And he was having a very difficult time behaviorally. And so the classroom teacher, myself, and the administrator were calling this family constantly. And we were worried, right? We were providing information to them, and it was never anything positive. We were constantly calling, trying to problem solve with them, but that family put up a wall. They weren't able to collaborate with us. So we had to step back as educators and really create that goal for ourselves and think, okay, how are we going to form this relationship with this family in order to assist this child? So that's really what we did. We really had to start with that foundation from the ground up and build that trusting relationship with the family. Call when it was positive, right? Try and spend a little extra time. I was a special educator, so I had some time where I could spend with the parent and the child together to kind of be able to show that parent the interactions that I was having with that child in order to build that trust. And slowly that child's behavior improved both at home and school, and we were all able to collaborate and work together. But building that relationship between our students and our families is one of the most important things we can do. So another thing we can look at is trying some different things at the beginning of the school year. Having a all about me questionnaire is a great resource that you can have. Parents want to tell you about their children, right? And we want to know. Another thing, I know not everybody has this as a resource, but if you can advocate for it, if you're not able to do it yet, home visiting can be huge. How often as educators have we been chatting with each other and said, oh my goodness, I wish I could be a fly on the wall in that home and be able to really truly understand where that child is coming from. So instead of having that dislike, we were able to create understanding for that student. So if you're able to do home visiting and you have families that are generous enough to welcome you into their home, please, please, please take advantage of that. It is huge. So then also we'd want to be able to connect with our students and connect with each child. We want to be present, right? Maybe it's that we've had a really hard time before we arrived at school today, and we need to be able to kind of put that behind us. So maybe it's that we're all going to join together on the rug and we're going to do some yoga. All right, I am guilty. There have been a few times where I've put that yoga up on the smart board and then I'm doing attendance or I'm doing lunch count and trying to multitask and using that as a babysitter. But are there some different things we can do? Can we join the students while they're doing the yoga, which is also helping our mindset? Can we turn off the smart board and maybe have each student come up with a different idea for a yoga move we can do, and just really being present with them in that moment. And then being playful and enjoying our students, all right? Preschool is not a place where we can fake it till we make it. Those kids know whether you like them or not. So really, if you're able to be present, then you're also able to be able to be playful and understand your students and just enjoy what you're doing every day, right? And then being able to provide that appropriate caring touch, and then understanding those students with that dislike and understanding, right? And then honoring our students' unique qualities. So we may have a student that has, say, something that we're having a real hard time with. Maybe we have a student that's very loud and has big movements all the time, or maybe we have a child that's shyer and is real sensitive. So are there ways that we can nurture their uniqueness instead of push it back down? Because we know that if we're trying to push and tamper that back down, often it kind of comes back in our face and we have some repercussion and it doesn't work so well. So instead, can we nurture that? Is it that child that's really loud and rambunctious and social is the one that's able to be the greeter for other students in the morning? Is it that sensitive child then becomes a child that's able to nurture other students when they're upset because they are more of an empath? So how can we take those unique qualities and really use them to everybody's advantage and teach that child to have confidence in that area? So your classroom is always speaking, and then you control what it says. So in the chat, I want you to drop some information here for me. What do you want your classroom to say? Okay. Think about what you want your classroom to say when your students arrive there or your families do, and drop it in the chat. And I'm going to fire back to the ed team and say if there's anything that they think they would like their classrooms to say, or in the past they have. You
I'm
are welcome here. Yeah.
yeah. I was going to share that this photo is from one of my kindergarten classrooms where we created this affirmations mirror above the sink. So every time children went to wash their hands, and this was right in the year following COVID, we were washing our hands a lot, reinforced with all these great attributes about ourselves.
I love it. I've seen a lot of "you are safe here," right? And we know we talked about safety a little bit, but it's not just that physical safety, it's that emotional safety as well. I love that. All are welcome here. Make friends, have fun, and learn. Yeah. I love it. So we're going to get a little, keep dropping that in the chat. We'll be able to review it a little bit more later as well, but we're going to review all of those things and what our classroom can say. Great input. Thanks, guys. Welcome to your second home. Yes, yes. This is where you live, right? This is your second family. School is amazing. Thank you guys for sharing. All right, so our classroom voice. Are we listening to it? So as an educator, think about how long you have been in your classroom. And if you stopped hearing, are we desensitized to what our classroom is and what our classroom's voice says? Do we need to step back and take a look and think about if any changes need to be made? Now, there are things that we cannot control, right? Everybody dreams of this beautiful curved furniture, and research says that this curved furniture really promotes safety for children, okay? But we may not be able to have that right away, and that's okay. So what can we do as educators in our classrooms to really be able to promote that feeling of safety, like all of those things we want our classroom to say? So Catherine Murray says, a calm brain is a thinking brain. Okay, so really thinking about that when we're preparing for our school year. And you know, accepting those things we cannot change. You know, we may not be able to change our furniture or our rugs. Our wall colors may need to be what they are, right? But are there some different things we can do to create that calming classroom, right? Can we do natural lighting? Okay. I had a Head Start program I worked with once that had a little extra funding, and they had fluorescent lighting on the ceilings, and they really wanted to get rid of that quickly before school started. And the director went out and bought lamps, okay, and some soft light bulbs. So they were able to change the lighting in the classroom so that it wasn't as harsh for those students that may have those sensory concerns, right? And then, do you have some cozy furniture? You know, do we have calming colors? Maybe you can't change your wall color. I was in a school that was beautifully redone a few years ago, and we came into all our preschool classrooms and we had a lime green wall that was in every single one of those classrooms. And that was just something that the designer did. So are there ways that you can modify that without painting over it because you aren't allowed to? You know, do we have bulletin board paper and lighter, calmer colors that maybe we can cover it up with, or different things? A big thing can be just fewer materials out, especially at the beginning of the school year. Can we declutter some? Can we really have those defined spaces, and that kind of thing? So just really accepting what we can't change, but also what do we have control of that we can change, and making those changes, understanding that a calmer brain is a thinking brain. So here's some pictures of voices from center. So in the chat, I want you to look at these pictures and tell me what they say to you. How are they speaking to you? For reference, this right here is the same center area before and after. And then looking at these center areas, if you want to drop in the chat what they are speaking to you.
The one with the moon, I want to take a nap right now. I'm wishing that were my office.
Yeah, that's an important one. That nap time. I've been in or had my own classrooms where if it's not communicating, hey, it's time to rest, nobody's sleeping in there. During COVID, when my school I was at previously was being remodeled, we were in a basement, and we actually had one classroom that had no windows, which is not recommended. We know that. We want natural light, of course. But those kids, every single one of them, is the only school year I ever had this happen. They slept, and they slept every day because we were in a basement and it was completely dark except for our little night lights. Yeah, you see natural materials. Yeah. So we got some natural materials in this. So looking at these two pictures right here, we can see that this center is communicating two different things, right? So right now, this center is communicating, I'm closed, right? It's not time for sensory play. I told Erin earlier, this was for a different reason. Apparently, they needed this for COVID and they couldn't get in the bins. They had to have their own separate bins. They couldn't get in the sand table. But I actually really like the idea of putting a tablecloth over your sensory table, your discovery table, because I've had lots of students that have gone over when I haven't undone that big heavy wooden cover, and have tried to get in there and maybe have gotten fingers pinched and stuff. So just having a tablecloth over this really communicates, hey, this center is closed right now, right? And then this center is open now, right? We flipped it over, and then this center is open now. And then over here, we have a block center, and we're going to get a little bit more into this in a little bit, but this really is showing that safety piece, right? So it's a big area. They have plenty of room for blocks, but also it is kind of warding off. You have the shelves here that are saying, hey, it's not an area to run through. We're trusting that our blocks are not going to get knocked over. We're able to build and create without worrying about friends coming through here. So it's cordoned off and on those three sides. And like Erin said, this one's communicating, hey, it's time to rest. So do we need to prep some different materials if you don't have beautiful blackout blinds, right? I have gone and gotten tension rods with blackout curtains to put up in classrooms for nap time because it's just so bright because we don't have any curtains and our blinds aren't thick enough. And then do we have that cozy area in the library that invites us to come and read or to read independently? I love this group of stuffed animals here saying, hey, come and read to us, right? So that they can do so independently a little bit. And then having that calm down area here really facilitates some independent de-escalation, but also has room for co-regulation with maybe a friend or a teacher. You have your calm down steps here and then some different materials. I always like to have a basket of calming materials like noise canceling headphones, sensory tools, maybe a weighted friend for their lap, that kind of thing. And then this is really communicating, hey, come, be creative. This is open-ended. There's not a lot of examples here, right? We're promoting independence when we have these smaller glue bottles. Those big ones are sometimes hard for our little friends' hands. So this is promoting that independence piece. And then this is, to me as a teacher, this is communicating. This teacher was prepared. She did not want to scrub this table later. She went with that butcher paper and taped it down so her friends could get a little messy and that would be okay. So we're going to look at 4 core messages when we're talking about our environment. Okay, we're going to talk about, is this a safe place for us that we can trust? Okay, so a safe place. Are we capable of working in this environment and moving through it and being independent? Do we belong here? Do we see ourselves? This is our family, right? This is our second home. So do we belong here? Do we see ourselves and our family members and our and the materials that are out and on our walls, right? And then that you can be yourself, that all students are able to access this. And I see in the chat, we have art centers that let the children create whatever they want. Yes, that they can be open-ended art materials. I love that process art. So the first piece we're going to look at is communicating safety. This is a safe place that you can trust. Okay. So one of those ways we can promote safety is predictability. We have those center areas set out. They know where they are and where they can go, and it isn't changing a lot. I know I said I changed my room 6 times in 1 year. Obviously, we do need to make changes throughout the year, but we also want to provide that predictability. So how is there a balance between that? We don't want to come in every week and everything be changed, right? So how can we provide that for children? Is it free of runways? So there have been plenty of times where my classroom has communicated, hey, come and run and use this as a launching pad. So how do we do that? Can we change up how we have our shelving placed? If you're able to buy new shelving, and I don't know how Erin feels about this one, but one of my recommendations is that even in a preschool room, if you're going to have shelving that is going to float, it's either got that plexiglass backing, is see-through, or it's 24 inches, which is actually toddler shelving, because we want to be able to sit down on the floor in one area and still be able to see across the room. So really thinking about that. Is there a way that we can float some of our shelving to break up those runway areas, but also be able to have that line of sight? Okay. And
Rachel,
Erin, I think, dropped
we
that in the
added an
chat.
open back shelving to our collection just for that purpose.
Yeah.
And we're really affirmed when we as an education team are learning more about environment and how it provides psychological safety, that being able to see through and even better being able to pass through our pieces of furniture really supports that sense of psychological safety, because it doesn't put up an actual barrier, a sight barrier, or a real true back to something. So love that.
Yeah. And then one of my favorite things to do, we talked about the block area and how it needs to be sectioned off, hopefully on 3 sides, maybe a little bit more, so they feel safe to build and create without having things knocked over. But I also like to have my dramatic play area close to my block area, because often those materials just tend to be interchangeable. I have kiddos that have loved making pizzas with the triangle blocks, and then they want to go over to the dramatic play center to get those toppings and back and forth. So are we promoting that kind of inner center collaboration, as you could say? And then I like to have my sensory area and art area close to the restroom or sinks, if you have those in your classroom. Just logistically, it's what works for all of us, right? To be able to get there quicker. You don't want to run across the room with your hands with paint all over them. How can we do that? And then our library and cozy corner and technology writing, all those quieter things are as far away as possible from that block center and dramatic play, because that's where we get rowdy, right? So we want to do that. And then I think probably another recommendation I like to make is that, if you have your cubbies in your room, they're close to the door. But also when we're walking in that door, we're not stepping straight onto that block area rug. So you don't have teachers that are stepping over everybody. And also, if you're using your block area for your whole group, which is typical because it's your larger rug area, right? You don't want people to be coming in and walking through that and interrupting. So really thinking about that when you're planning out your room. And another side note, and there'll be some resources as well. This is all done in something called Floor Planner that you can look into and access, where you can actually drop in your furniture and move it around and kind of visualize it in your actual space. So we can talk a little bit more about that later. If you have any questions about that at the end, feel free to drop that and we can talk about that a little bit more. So here I want to talk about material storage. This is one of our great shelving units you actually can get with the labels on it, which would be absolutely amazing for me because you know you're always making labels. But do we know where everything belongs? A place for everything and everything in its place, right? And there's a reason for all of that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So let's see here. And you know, as a teacher, we know where things go. You know, we know that this shelf right here is meant for books, but maybe our children in our classroom have never experienced that before. So how are we going to label things to kind of be able to promote that understanding for our students? And not only understanding, but it really cuts down on some of the anxiety that you may see in some of your students. I want you to think about when you've gone to someone else's home and you've eaten dinner and you're helping them clean up and you've washed the dishes and you don't know where anything goes, right? We don't want our children to experience that. So how can we create that in our room? I am guilty of the labeling of things being the last thing I do before my teachers come. I usually don't have it done before parent-teacher night, and I'm really rushing that next day to do it. So the way that we can promote that is as we introduce materials, we're slowly adding those labels and doing that. Another option, if you do have more time, that I've done in the past, particularly when we had a little bit more time during COVID, is to make multiple pictures of things and laminate them and have them for later, because we know that they get ripped and pulled up and we've got to make a new one. So how often has it been ripped and pulled up and then nothing else has been put down again? So how can we kind of build that into our preparation for our students? So this is a great picture of that, you being capable. So how our students are capable of using our materials. So how are we breaking this down? So High Scope does an amazing job in their first 30 days lesson manual of really breaking down the introduction of materials. As teachers, we're so excited to have all of our students join us, and we kind of get carried away with just introducing them to all of these great, amazing things. But how can we slow down and really focus more on that process piece, right? And then when we do that, it promotes better understanding of our materials, but it's also going to cut down on some of those behaviors that we see that we maybe aren't so happy about as teachers. So with this one, it does a great job of literally all that's in this art area is watercolors. Maybe it's week 2, 3, or 4 in the classroom and you're ready to introduce your watercolors. So you may have a lesson that is purely about filling up your cups. I know these are glass. I know some folks might have to use plastic, and that's fine. Filling up your cups appropriately and why, okay? So we're going to practice filling, and we may have some lines on our cup to kind of scaffold. We're going to fill it halfway and really understanding the why behind that. How many times have you filled up your cups of water and maybe you filled them halfway and you've got one for each student, and you turn back around and you have a student that has poured one cup into another and everything's overflowing? So maybe we're going to problem solve and allow students to do that. Maybe we have a little water catching tray underneath, and then really explain why we're going to only fill it halfway. Then when our students later on are accessing these materials, they know, hey, this is why we fill this halfway, because we don't want it to overflow and make a mess. But also, when my water gets brown or my water gets gray and I need new water, instead of the teacher having to come over and say, hey, it's time to get, let me do this for you, they can start to be independent and do that themselves. And that really creates that I am capable, I am confident in myself, right? So that providing those tools to allow our students to do that and independently access the materials. So this is a great display. You can see that we have our labels on all of these different containers. And then, but at the beginning of the school year, we're not going to introduce all these things at once, right? We're going to slowly introduce these things. Maybe typically I do crayons and paper, that's first, and then we're adding markers and then maybe watercolors, and we're slowly integrating all these materials, and then we're changing them out through the school year. So another thing that helps with that labeling beast, because it is a beast, it's a lot to do, is when you have new materials that you're bringing in, you're cutting the catalog picture out, or maybe it's just the label from the box that you have. So how are we labeling things to kind of make it a little bit easier on ourselves? Because it can be a lot. And again, are we labeling as we slowly pull out these items for our students to explore? Because it can get overwhelming. So here we have the center selection system. We have a couple other pictures here of problem solving as well, but I want to talk about center selection because this to me has always been a hot topic. I have changed my center selection system multiple times within a school year. I have changed it year to year because I've never been able to find something that was a really good fit. So drop in the chat if you have had a system as far as being able to go from one center to another, how many students stay in one center, when do you transition, that kind of thing. If you've had something that has just been like magic for you guys, I would love to hear it. And then if Ed team, if you have any recommendations, I would love that too.
I'll just add some context for that matchy-matchy example.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple curricula
idea.
that use color to help children identify the interest areas. So it might be that the background of the interest area sign, naming what this interest area is a certain color. So if it's tools of the mind, the background is red for literacy. And then teachers are encouraged to carry that color throughout the center. They might choose a carpet that has elements of that color. They might choose, like you saw in the other shelving, a green cover. Well, the green cover went along with the green background on the interest area sign and some of the other pieces that are there. And for children who need that type of visual mediator, they can help connect, oh, I know the purple place, right? They're still learning print awareness. And so even seeing the picture of the girl at the easel, that color, if it's repeated in a certain area, can help them, oh, I want to go to purple today. And then we as educators help support them and scaffold that language. Oh, you want to go to art today? What are you looking forward to creating once you go to art today? So that could be something where if you're looking for any type of center management, interest areas, or center place system, using color and then repeating that color in the same play area could be something that could be helpful for the children.
Yeah, I just saw a comment, and that might have been from you, Erin, about interest areas protected from unwanted trespassers. And that was one of the other things that I loved when I used HighScope many years ago, is the no touch or a stop sign. You know, when you've done an activity, and how often do we know that children are creative and they're doing something, and then we have to transition to something else and they have a difficult time. So allowing that, okay, we're going to leave this here, or we have a tray, we're going to move it right here for you, and then you can come back to it later, is a great way to help those children that may have difficulty with transitioning. All right, so we have from Andrea with popsicle sticks with names, and draw one by one for each student to choose their station. As far as number of permitted students at each station, if there are 5 chairs, it's 5 kids station. If there are 3 chairs, it's a 3-chair station. Yeah, I like that. That's great. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But one of the things I want to talk about is, you know, we see a lot of times, this is something where we need to be observant. The block area and the dramatic player area, a lot of times we allow more students there than we may say in the sensory bin. Okay, that might only be a 2 or 3 student area. And you may have a child that you notice is not going to those specific areas because it may be a little bit overwhelming for them. So are there ways we can accommodate them? Is it that that child wants to pick this center but may have difficulty with having so many peers around them? So we're allowing them to take those materials and go to a quieter space with them. What do we need to do to really promote that? You guys are still putting stuff in the chat. Feel free to, Ed team, if you see anything amazing, feel free to add in from the chat.
Yeah, I'll also just share that if you're popping things into the chat, you can change it to everyone so that all the other participants can see it too.
Mm-hmm.
There's some great things coming up.
I like the not yet placed over certain center areas if it's not time to play there yet. Tools of the mind, yeah. They choose clips and they have a maximum of 4 that they can choose, so they're kind of planning ahead for what they're going to do that day. I love that. So the next component we want to look at is that message of you belong here, okay? So when I walk into your classroom, can I see that these students live here, right? Is this where we belong? Is this where you belong? So I should be able to see pictures of them, pictures of their artwork, pictures of their families, right? All of, oop, did we go back? Sorry, friends. I messed up. There we go. Sorry. So they belong there. So this is right here, a family tree. I will say that at the beginning of the year, especially if you have children that struggle with that homesickness, this is really powerful. Having those pictures of their families and asking families to send them in is amazing. I have had some times where it's more difficult for people to do printed pictures, and I've actually had parents email them to me and either print them out, or you can actually, if you have a smart board, put them all up on the smart board and kind of keep that up as your background. So throughout the day, they can point out their family members. And then this right here is absolutely amazing. I absolutely love it. They've done some self-portraits in preschool on plates, and then the teacher has taken a world map and they pinned where each of these students' families is from, right? So it's a great way. So we should be able to see who lives there. This is like your house, right? When you go into your home, you have family photos. You have different art that you've created. You have different materials and things that are there that are from you. So that's what we want to do, to send that message of you belong here. So the next piece is you can be yourself here. So are we including all of our students and meeting all of their needs, right? That's about that those adaptations that we might need. So are we meeting those sensory needs? We talked about having some sensory items in your classroom available if you have students that maybe have difficulty with noise. Another one that I have done is bought a cheap pack from Amazon of like 10 or 15 sets of sunglasses. So even inside, sometimes it's too bright. You might have a child that wants to wear sunglasses, and that's okay. And then also, are you promoting diversity related to languages? If you have multilingual students, are you labeling things when you're using words? Are you labeling that chair with the word for chair in English and in Spanish? So you can promote that for your child. And then I have a story about my little friend here. We were just talking to her before we got started. She is now a senior in high school. So she has grown quite a bit since here, but she has cochlear implants, and she was in my 3-year-old classroom, and she could verbally communicate beautifully. But when we went on the playground, the cochlear implants had to come off. She'd take them off and throw them at me or hand them to me real quick before she went and played, because of the static electricity on the slides and then the magnets on the metal, because they would come off and magnetize and then we'd lose them. So everyone in the classroom had to learn playground related sign language so they could communicate with her. So it was, do you want to swing? That kind of thing. So we were able to do that for her. So are we really thinking about that for all of our students, and so that they can be their self within the classroom and they feel like they're accepted? So we've gone through that environment. So I kind of want to review some things with you guys real quick. So is it a safe place, right? We're looking at our furniture. We're looking at how it's arranged. How does that promote the feeling of safety for our students? But then also, is it actually physically safe for them to be there? Do we have that line of sight? Are we preventing things from tipping? That kind of thing, right? And then does it promote that they're capable? Does the material that we selected, the way things are stored and displayed, promote that independence and the ability to access things on their own? And then do they feel like they belong, right? Do they come in and it feels like that second home? Are there pictures and photos of them? Are they seeing things within that classroom that reflect their own diversity in their home? And then you can be yourself. Do we have adaptive spaces and supports? And then also that bilingual piece, and anything else you might need to have to adapt your classroom to fit your students' needs. So the next piece we're going to talk about is routines and rituals, okay? Routines set you free, but rituals feed your soul. So the example I want to give for this is that a routine is that you have dinner at your kitchen table every Thursday night. A ritual is having Thanksgiving dinner on a Thursday night, right? So I want you to think about the difference between those two. Are there specific things and rituals that you have within your classroom that are promoting that family feeling within your environment. So right here is more of a routine, right? Where we have our pictures, but we are checking off our students as they come in. And then this photo really demonstrates how we can create a ritual out of that routine. So this is a great example of a teacher that had just gone out to the Dollar Tree and gotten some votive candle holders and placed their students' pictures in there. And then they found their name every morning and they turned on their little light on their candle and they put themselves there. So and then every day, it really did a great job of communicating or facilitating that communication with the teacher and talking about, okay, who's here today, who's not here today, versus our previous slide really is just our basic, this is who is here, this is who's not here. So we want to really feed our souls and our students' souls by creating rituals. And I'm going to put Christine on the spot right now. She has a great story of a child facilitated ritual that started in one of her classrooms.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. I think sometimes as teachers, it's a surprise when the most meaningful things don't originate from us. So one of our, a few years ago, I had a group that we would come back on Mondays and all the children, we'd share about our weekends. And one Monday morning, this one little fellow was telling me he had spent the weekend with his grandparents and had a lot of sugary treats. And he was telling us, and I had donuts, and then I had pancakes with tons of maple syrup, and then we had ice cream for a treat, and then we had dessert. And I was like, oh my heavens, like you are probably filled up with sugar. Let me come look in your ears. Do you have sugar in there? Do you still have brains in there? Or is it just full of sugar? And he came over and I looked and he giggled. Well, from then on, every Monday morning, instead of hearing about our weekends, I heard all the sugary treats, sometimes real, sometimes made up, because the children really craved like the humor and the joke and the connection and peeking in their brains, and they'd even eat something at snack or lunch and then have me look in their ears and see if it turned into sugar. So I would never have planned for sugar shares, but I even had to tell subs, like on Mondays, you better watch out for sugar shares because they're going to ask for it if you don't.
I love that. I still
Love
love
it. So if you have any rituals with your students that you've had in the past that you would like to share that were in your daily routine, please drop those in the chat because we're all looking for new special ones to share. And really, it really helps create that that classroom community, right? And they remember that forever. That was a huge deal. I remember in kindergarten, we had nap time, and if you napped the whole time, you got prize box. And my teacher every day would call out that I was like the A+ like napper because I would take an amazing nap every single day, and then I would get to have that prize box, I guess, on Friday or whatever it was. So there's little things like that that our students really remember and hold on to. So how can we cherish that and provide that to our students?
Rachel, I'm going to pause you right there before
Yep.
you go to the next one and just say a couple things. One about the self-registration rituals, like that pumpkin one. Some of those, when it's made different based on, it could be seasonality, it could be based on things that you're studying. Let's say you do like investigation studies, and so maybe those are changing out every month or so. If the self-registration ritual is something, and that's like an attendance thing, right? You could have other attendance charts, other ways of recognizing, I'm here, I came to school today, and I, as the child, am going to show you that I came to school. When those are connected in some type of ritualistic way, that also might connect to learning or something happening seasonality, like you get to create and generate this excitement right at the beginning of the day to something that's going to happen no matter what. Like we're going to take attendance, we're going to figure out who's here and who's not here. But as soon as we add the sense of connection and meaning, it's pretty remarkable, just like the sugar shares, that these rituals can take on a mind of their own, right? And then the children really end up like driving the day. They tell you what's important to them, right? Maybe it's we're learning toileting or diapering, and one of the kids or one of the teachers preempts every single diaper change with a special secret high five. So each child gets their own handshake. So it might be like, I get a boom slap, and I do that every single time right before I'm going to go do my toileting or my diaper. But then each child gets their own, right? So just connecting things, these things are going to happen all day long. We're going to have all of these routines in our classroom, but connecting something special and meaningful to the child just creates these rich and wonderful rituals. So you can move on. I just wanted to add those.
Thanks for sharing. I love it. So, and then the visual piece is really helping our children with that sense of safety, right? We know how important that sense of safety is for our students. So we talked a little bit about attendance and sign-in, but just having that predictability, and not a lot of teachers do this, but I highly recommend having yourself and then your classroom assistants on that sign-in sheet. Because when you're not there for the day, they can have the communication. How often are we saying, they're saying, oh, so-and-so's not here today, when you have that sign-in visual for everyone. And then you're talking about, oh yeah, their mom called and said they're sick. We'll see them hopefully tomorrow. We'll be thinking about them. So you can do the same for the teachers, right? So I highly recommend doing that. And then that visual schedule is all important, right? We know it's a bear, you're creating it, you're changing it. How do we create it? We're actually going to provide you guys with some documents that you can actually edit that will be able to help you with this. But having that, what time of day it is, if there's a change that occurs, we really want to be able to put that in there as well. And it's important for the teachers to have for sure as well. And then that classroom jobs chart is a great visual that you can have. But one of the things I want to mention is a lot of times we're choosing kids at random, or we're kind of cycling through kids and what job they have. But really taking the time and reflecting, if you have a student that needs a job more than another. We talked about that student and those unique needs, and you have that real chatty, loud student. Is that the child that needs to be the greeter more often, right? Aaron had a great idea earlier when we were going over this of vacation, okay? So you get to go on vacation today. You don't have a job, right? Maybe we have some sunglasses or a lei that they can put on because it's their vacation day. Because so often we do have students that do get a little upset when they don't get a job that day. And it's very difficult for a teacher that has 18, 20 children in their classroom to have so many jobs to juggle. We know that. So if you have any other ideas, feel free to pop it in the chat. But I loved Aaron's idea about today's your vacation day. You're not at work. So it's a great life skill that you're teaching them ahead of time. I love it. So these are the visual support templates that we're going to provide for you guys today, and you will be able to edit some of them, and you'll be able to edit some wording, or if you need to put it in a different language. This one is great because you're actually going to be able to change if you need to change the time of day labeling. So maybe you don't call it circle time, maybe it's large group. You're also going to be able to put your students' photos in there. We highly recommend if you can take student pictures of doing the things throughout the day. That's definitely helpful. I also recommend if you can take a picture of the student that has a hard time, like say it's cleanup, you take a picture of that child cleaning up and that's the photo that you use. It works like a charm. So if you can do that, to preface that, one thing you can do is you can print these out ahead of time and have the pictures that are on here already there. And then as you're able to take those photos of your students, you can drop those in. I know how difficult it is that first couple of days of school when you're trying to create that routine and you haven't been able to go to CVS and print your pictures out yet. So please feel free to do that. And then this one right here, just those classroom expectations or rules. You will be able to edit the wording for that. But these are just kind of those primary rules that we all kind of have with that. So lots of editable documents that you'll be able to have at the end of this webinar. And so we are now going to wrap it up with what is one thing you can do to create a more connected classroom community, okay? So we've worked on creating a space where children feel safe and trusted, right? We worked on selecting materials and organizing them in a way that fosters a sense of independence, making a child feel like they belong. That's huge, right? And then supporting individuality and then adapting that space as we need to. And then that differing languages. And then integrating the 4 key messages into your classroom design, right? That safe place, you're capable, you belong, be yourself. How are we going to do that within our classroom design? Okay. And so in the chat, I want you to just put down what is one thing that you feel like you can do to be more connected within your classroom community.
We really want your ideas and your wisdom to share out and collect. So we're gonna vamp a little time for you to put in your ideas. Like, what's your one thing that you can start to do? Maybe one thing that you learned that, like, yeah, I can put that into practice. But I just wanted to make a note for any administrators who have joined us or leaders where you're not directly leading a classroom. But there's a parallel process here for all of what we've discussed for implementing with adults, right? Like, let's think about our own office spaces or our adult spaces. How can we make them places of safety and trust? How can we make them places where the educators feel like I belong and I can be myself? So maybe in your staff lounge, you have an area for a staff family board where we welcome in photos of everyone's families and they just come in and put their photos there, or their own children's created artwork. But also meeting adults' individual needs so that your environment communicates you can be yourself here. Do you have adults? Well, I know that you do, because if you work with adults, they have different sensory needs. I was going to say, do you have people with different sensory needs? You do. So being able to accommodate and adapt your workspaces to the adults' needs is also amazing. So all of what we went through, if you're a leader or administrator, you can also put on that hat and say, oh, wow, how can I, number one, focus on my relationships, the environment, and then the routines and rituals that I create for the adults. And I saw that Greg had an idea in here. So
he had a great idea. So Rupert is amazing. I love this. So this is really, what Greg is saying is that he had a stuffed animal that went home on the weekend with different students. And then the parents wrote about, collaborating with the students, they wrote about what Rupert did on the weekend. Okay. So that's amazing because you are facilitating that home and school relationship, right? But then that's also a ritual. I mean, that's huge. Those kids are never going to forget that you guys did that. I love that tradition.
So cool.
The light, yeah, you turn your light on when you sign in. I love that. Thanks,
Oh,
Peggy.
making that connection though too, to like being kind and helpful. Yeah.
Let your light shine. Yeah, being kind. I love that.
Pete the cat. Yay.
Yeah, Pete the cat.
Shelby will love that.
I had a kid that took Pete the cat home every night, and it was not part of the plan. She just took Pete at home every day. That was actually last year. Pete would go missing, and her mom would call and say, hey, I think this is your Pete. But I love it. Pete had to go on adventures too. I love it.
Yeah, so Carla's going to think about some routines that she can turn into rituals. Such a great place to start, right? And think about all the routines that have subroutines, from mealtime to hand washing to getting ready to go outside. You know, is there a transition item that you could create? And maybe even it's one of our stuffed friends, but then that item could be something to help the children transition, or it's incorporated into a ritual within the day. Home play.
Yeah.
That's so great. We get to take a classroom game home. Yes, sign me up. I would like home play, not homework.
I love that.
Everybody who I work with, if you could please assign me some home play, I will happily go home and do some play.
That is so cool. Home play. And they get to come back to school. How often do they want to take home the materials from the classroom and they're not able to? So how can we facilitate that and kind of create some learning in that relationship between families and school? I love it. Kindness tree in the classroom from Emily.
Kim, I love that you took evidence of the children's development and turned that into a keepsake, right? So the fact that we're showing their progression of the sign-ins, and sorry, that was just two hosts and panelists, Kim, so I'm sharing it out for everybody. But the pre-K class sign-in sheets, you would keep those and record those, and then at the end of the year, really share them, send them home so that they could see, wow, this is the progression of their writing skills from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And then it becomes a treasured keepsake.
Lori, I like your wish you well board. That's a great way to kind of cut down on anxiety when children are worried about their teachers or their peers when they're not there at school. I love that.
Laurie, do you guys sing the song? You can answer me in the chat. But we wish you well, all through the day today, we wish you well. And then we do it for all the children who weren't with us that day. So like as a part of our attendance, we say, who's here today, who's not today? And then whoever wasn't here, we sing to them. It could just be that was like local to the group that I knew, but I've always been curious, like, do other people?
I've never heard that one. I love
You've
that.
never heard that one? Okay.
Yeah. So then if anybody has any questions that they want to follow up with today, we're going to move here in a second to kind of show you those templates and how you can access them. Everybody's liking that votive idea. So now we have to come up with some different ideas. Maybe we need to make a Pinterest board of just different sign-in things to kind of change with the seasons or with the studies that we're doing, right?
Lori, I wish you well in doing that new created tradition. It's actually a lot of fun. So here's a fun way if it's your first time doing it for the kids. After you sing the song, you ask them to put their hands on their heart, and then we sing that song to everybody who's not here today. And then at the end, you say, on the count of 3, we're going to take all those well wishes right from our heart, and we're going to send them out to everybody. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. And then sometimes they say, we wish you well. But it can really just be such a fun ritual, and it's pretty powerful when we take our good intentions and we physically pull them into our heart, and then we hold the children in our mind who aren't with us that day because they're at home, and then we send it out to them. So I hope you have fun. I hope your kiddos like it and that you like it, and it becomes a treasured ritual in your class. Yeah, sure, Lori.
All right. So if you have any questions or want to keep dropping those shares in the chat, please do. But I'm going to let Christine go over those resources that we're going to provide to you today.
Yeah, so we have on the left, there is a kind of planning guide as you can reflect on our time here together and think about your next steps moving forward. We really wanted to provide lots of ideas you could turn around and implement tomorrow. And then on the right is a resource guide kind of compiling all of the templates and downloadables we've made. And I'm going to be sharing both of those links out in the chat, but also they're on the landing page for the webinar, so you can access those at any time. And the static PDFs you can download and print right away. And if you'd like to edit things so that they are either reflecting photos of children in your setting or add language that's more representative of how you talk about classroom expectations or home languages of children in your setting, you can go in and edit the text, and then it's going to be really relevant for you and your students. And the editable templates are on Canva. So when you go in and click that link, it's going to send you to Canva. And even if you don't have a Canva account, you can click through and it's going to make your very own copy that's only going to be personal to you. Nobody else can see it. And you can make all the changes you need and print it out.
Thanks so much, Christine. All right, and so there'll be an evaluation. I'm not sure if that's been dropped in the chat yet. I promise it's really short and simple. So if you don't mind, we love having your feedback. It helps us when we plan our future webinars. So if you can, well, that'll be dropped in the chat and you guys can complete that. And then of course, there will be a certificate for everyone that completed this. There will also be a recording, like Kathy said, that will be available. Please feel free to share that with anyone you think will benefit from it. And then let's look ahead, September 18th at 1 o'clock. So it's good during that nap time, if you have nap time. We're going to have another webinar that's really focused on social emotional learning. So our ed team will be hosting that, and we're super excited. Maybe we can see some of the same names and locations that we've had here today. Thanks so much for joining.